So first of all, I did this lecture on the convention in Italy already 6 years ago. And people liked it a lot. And nowadays, this topic became more important. And Case encouraged me to do this lecture again. And then in this way, virtual, and to bring this online. And I think it's a very important topic for us, especially in these times. And then the content of this lecture is I will give different, let's say, I will name different things of a community, and I will show many different aspects from practice, but also that I read over the years, so from different writers. And then I also will include my own journey in this process to come to a community. It's a bit longer lecture than the one I did last summer about negative intention. But nevertheless, I hope you will enjoy it. I will start with a quote from Pema Chodron. The whole globe is shaking up. So what are you going to do when things are falling apart? You're either going to become more fundamentalist and try to hold things together, or you're going to forsake the old ambitions and goals and live life as an experiment, making it up as you go along. So let's start with the first questions. Why are communities important for core energetics? Well, communities are an important aspect to all spiritual work and approaches. From ancient times till now, people have created circles and communities as an energy field. This is a necessary aspect for the individuals to be held and carried to a next level of consciousness. You will see this in all kinds of religions worldwide. We are, as core energetics, on one side a modality in the field of body-psychotherapy, but we are also doing evolutionary process. And our transformation work that goes transpersonal needs this field. Also, learning in a community creates a different awareness. It's more focused on the connection, the whole, and less on the individual. I will focus in this lecture on the history and the importance of communities, but will also give guidelines how to build community and how to keep it a healthy organism, that everybody can have benefit of it. We are bombarded with global images of genocide, dislocations caused by ethnic hatred, and stories of individual violence committed daily in communities around the world. The word evil comes easily to our lips to explain these terrible behaviors. If you look around at most organizations and communities, people are still being kept in boxes. They are not invited to contribute, to create, or to care about each other. In my experience, people everywhere are looking for new ways of working together and for more harmonious relationships. We know we need to work together because daily we are overwhelmed by problems that we can't solve alone. People want to help. We want to contribute. We want to feel hopeful. As leaders, as colleagues, it's time to turn to one another, to engage in the search for human goodness. We need everybody's creativity to find our way through this strange new world. We can trust that most people want to care about others, and we can invite them to step forward with their compassion. We realize now that you can't hate someone whose story you know. We only hope that we are creating a future worth working for. We can't do it alone. We can't get there without each other, and we can't create it without relying on the human goodness. Even if I speak my own words, it touches me. So let's start about my own journey. I grew up in a very fundamentalistic Protestant family and village. The rules how to live and to behave were very strict. As a young girl, I rebelled against the authority and all this dominance. I didn't feel any freedom in realizing my own life with all my dreams and ambitions. I had to be a certain way. And in my case, it was to marry and have kids. That was where women were made for. In being a rebellious girl, I became more and more an outsider, and I had to flee the village to have a life the way I wanted. The downside of this was that it was very individual and it led to isolation, although I was still yearning for connection. The only one who was on my side was my friend and later husband. During the years of being a young woman, I expressed my rebellious behavior in being politically active in all kinds of radical groups and being a feminist. These groups and the women's movement expressed the ideals that I carried myself, but fulfilled also the need for connection. During my studies, the groups where I belonged to have a big significance for me because they were also my friends. When I did the training at the Bioenergetics Institute, I came finally to myself instead of being busy with politics, and the need to change the society. The bioenergetics training was in a residential setting, so we met at the venue where we all slept and had the meals together and were hanging out as a group every night. In my search for more transformational work and spirituality, I came across core energetics. Although the content of the training was very satisfying and fulfilling, the setting of it was very disappointing for me. There was no home, no residential place where we could stay together. We had to organize our own place to sleep, and for every meal we went out into the streets of Berlin to find our own food. No news to tell you that the group was shattered, and I had a connection with a few group members where I also shared my meals with. I found the way it was set up not congruent with the content of the training. After the training, I had a conversation with John Pirakos, what I needed to do to open an institute in Holland. It wasn't necessary to assist. When I entered the core training as a student, I was already a trainer at the Bioenergetics Institute. John wanted me to do the postgraduate in New York because he said I needed a community experience. And there my experience with the core community began. I saw and experienced many different activities that I liked and also that I would have done differently. During my year in New York, John died. So the plan that he had with me didn't come to an ending. I had to wait another 4 years to open an institute in Holland in 2005. I had a dream and a vision with my institute. I wanted to build a community, and I wanted an international school, so the language was English. Why international? Because on one hand, I couldn't open a first year every year if I only focused on the Dutch population. On the other hand, I wanted diversity, different nationalities, different cultures, different languages and religions. And in this way, I could build a rich community. In my opinion, a diverse community offers a platform that in a way mirrors the society where we could try different things than our ordinary lives could offer. The extra aspects that this core training gives is even beyond my own expectations. It has created a floor for communication, for curiosity in each other, for listening, for dealing with conflict, and for reconciliation. In this way, it has built a resilient body that can move and change all the time. A community that I have created and I'm leading, but I'm also participating in activities that are led by others. Malidoma Somé states that we human beings have a great need for one another. We have an instinct of community. However, this instinct to be together is devolving into growing fragmentation and separation. We experience increasing ethnic wars and terrorism. We are using the instinct for community that we all have to separate and protect us from one another, rather than creating a global culture of diverse communities. We know when we look at nature, communities of diverse species live together in ways that support both the individual and the entire system. We call those ecosystems. These communities are the different webs of relationships. Life takes form as individuals. Life takes form as individuals that immediately reach out to create systems of relationships. These individuals and systems arise from two conflicting forces: the absolute need for individual freedom and the need for relationships. In human society, we struggle with the tension between these two forces. In nature, you see successful examples where they bridge this paradox. There are biologists who advise that we can never direct a living system. Life accepts only partners, not bosses, because self-determination is its root in being. Another part of life is that we seek for communities because we have a deep need for relationship. Individuals cannot survive alone. We move continuously to discover what relationships we require and what's possible. Evolution progresses from these new relationships and not from the lonely dynamics of survival of the fittest. The same with changes. If you change, your surrounding changes with you. There is a permanent interest in co-evolving that it becomes impossible to distinguish the boundary between self and other. As a system forms such a co-evolutionary process, the new system provides a level of stability and protection that was not available when individuals were isolated. Particularly in the West, we move towards isolationism in order to defend our individual freedom. We choose a life lived alone in order for it to be our life. We give up the meaningful life that can only be discovered in relationship with others. We all have those experiences where we move collectively through a pandemic time where control and isolation are used as protection. It makes us suffer and thirsty towards each other. The call of purpose that we have in our core communities attracts individuals but does not require them to shed their uniqueness. Staying centered on what the work is together rather than on single identities transforms the tension of belonging and individuality into energetic and resilient communities. What makes us strong? We share the same intent and some basic principles about how to be together. There is no prescriptive role on how to be together. The main three roles that we hold are take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of this place. These rules are sufficient to keep everybody focused. As a healthy community, it's necessary to create space for diversity. It becomes a contribution rather than an issue of compliance or defiance. Peter Senge, in his book The Fifth Discipline, describes why a shared vision is important. He describes how shared vision in every organization leads towards a different focus than just the product. It's the people, the atmosphere, and the commitment that counts and leads towards a different productive attitude. If we work from a shared vision, the people's relationship counts and leads towards our community. Maslow defines it this way: when the task is no longer separate from the self, but rather identified with, then you couldn't define his real self without including that task. Running a core community is running a learning organization, not only in its product, but also in its continuous changing and developing. You cannot have a learning organization without a shared vision. Shared visions emerge from personal visions. This is how they derive their energy and how they foster commitment. This vision is not coming from top down, but from bottom up, because the only vision that motivates you is your vision. Despite of the ongoing individualism in the Western society, for the last 30 years, we are still animals who like to live in a herd. I see that over and over. People's personal vision includes dimensions that concern family, organizations, communities, and even the world. This is because we care, and caring is personal and rooted in values, concerns, and aspirations. Care is based on relationship. When I relate to you, I care. This asks from the leader who has this sense of shared vision to communicate in such a way that others are encouraged to share their visions. Those leaders need to be willing to share their vision and their visions continually. They also need to ask, will you follow me? The leader needs to be willing to listen. What's going on in the community? People organized in a community like we have are based upon commitment. That means they want it, they will make it happen, and they create it, whatever is needed. The committed person brings an energy, passion, and excitement that cannot be generated by someone who is only compliant. The committed person doesn't play by the rules of the game. He is responsible for the game. If the rules of the game stands in the way of achieving the mission, then he will find a way to change the rules. A group of people that are truly committed to a common vision is an awesome force. For our kind of organizations and communities, it's important that we formulate our vision positive instead of negative. First of all, positive statements stick to the subconscious and negative statements don't. There are two strong forces that can motivate organizations: fear and aspiration. Fear underlies negative visions and aspiration, the positive ones. Fear can, can produce extraordinary changes in a short amount of time, but aspiration endures as a continuing source of learning and growth. To let a community evolve, it needs a creative tension. This tension is actually always there. It's the tension between vision and reality. Committed people can hold their vision while seeing current reality clearly. As a leader, you need to give the example as well to hold your vision and to be in the reality of this profession. Also, bring the reality of the world into the community in all the complexity that is going on nowadays. We live in a time of increasing economic and political instability, of growing divisiveness and fear. We see everywhere failing systems and dying dreams. The number of people who are xenophobic in Europe is increasing. Whole nations have this as main political direction. There's also another side. It's also a time of new possibilities, of great examples of hope, of positive human evolution, and of transformation. Are we succeeding in solving major problems, or are we creating more? In my opinion, it's all at the same time. It's important to think about how we see all these issues, because your way of looking at it will affect your choice of actions. With this social instability, the need of new leaders is urgent. It's needed in communities everywhere. We need new leaders who know how to nourish and rely on the innate creativity, freedom, generosity, and caring of people. We need leaders who are life-affirming instead of destroying. We need new leaders who will support peaceful change, otherwise we will be confronted by increasing anarchy and societal meltdowns. So new leadership becomes a central and pressing challenge of our time. I strongly believe that the old leadership paradigm has failed this. This was based upon traditional practices of hierarchy, power, and bureaucracy. We need pioneering leaders who are willing to face challenging conditions. They often act in isolation, are criticized, mocked, or ignored by the prevailing culture. It is a constant struggle to maintain focus and courage. They also must invent the future while dealing with the past. They don't want to repeat the mistakes from the past because often they have suffered from ineffective or brutal leadership. It's also very difficult to break with tradition and invent something new. We are all raised in this tradition from top down. The people who follow want them to look familiar. They feel safer by plans they know. There's also no space for failure. It has to be right from the beginning, although that's impossible. We all want them to fail. This is the greatest unspoken challenge facing pioneering leaders. Society doesn't want them to succeed. If we acknowledge their success, it means we will have to change. We will have to abandon the comfort of our familiar beliefs and practices. Even if the old ways fail, we hold on to them fiercely. As a core community, we are a learning community. Not only teaching is a big deal of it, but also through the content of our approach, human transformation. This asks also certain skills of the leader. 40 years ago, I embraced the ideas of a Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire. He started educational projects for the poor who couldn't read or write, but did that in relation with their communities. They became rapid learners because the learning and the insight in all forces around them helped to relieve their conditions. His essential lesson is this: when people understand the forces that create the adverse conditions of their life and how they might change these forces, they become eager and rapid learners. He also stated that learning is a social experience. We learn the best when in relationship with others who share a common practice. Etienne Wenger, a pioneer in this field, states, "Since the beginning of history, human beings have formed communities that accumulate collective learning into social practices, communities of practice. Tribes are an early example. More recent instances include the guilds of the Middle Ages that took on stewardship of a trade, and also scientific communities that collectively define what counts as valid knowledge in a specific area of investigation. Less obvious cases could be a local gardening club, nurses in a ward, a street gang, or a group of engineers who are meeting regularly to share tips. Communities of practice demonstrate that it is natural for people to seek out those who have the knowledge and experience that they need. As people find others and exchange ideas, relationships develop and it strengthens the community. The community becomes a rich marketplace where knowledge and experience are shared. It also becomes an incubator where new knowledge, skills, and competences develop. There are 4 essential activities that new leaders need to do for their community. That is, name, connect, nourish, and illuminate. The first one, name the community. What kind of community is this? It's a community of learning and practice and not from place, although staying together during the training and eat and sleep in the same venue is an important part because it's formed among people who act from the same values and visions and who are doing similar work. They share the same type of work, but their practices are varied and unique, specific to the needs of their local culture. In this way, the community is very diverse in its expression and very united in its purpose. And then the second one, connect the community. Once the community has been named, it is important that people find the meaning of their connection. This need to be strong and present. We live in a time when connection across distance has become easier. Technology can facilitate working as community through shared websites and Facebook and online conferences. But technology is only a supplement to the need of being together in the same physical space from time to time. The stronger the connections, the more support and new knowledge will be born from those connections. The third one, nourish the community. Communities of practice need to be nourished with many different resources. They require ideas, methods, mentors, processes, information, equipment, technology, and money. Each of these is important, but the greatest need is that of knowledge, knowing what techniques and processes work well. This means for our learning community to plan as many different teachers as you can have, to have diversity in the team that inspires. And then the last aspect is to illuminate the community. There is a need to tell the stories of all these pioneering practitioners. You need to create a public attention for their efforts. For any of us, it's difficult to see a new paradigm, even when it's right under your nose. We need to hear those stories and celebrate their successes and continue to support them as our beacons to the future. A community is different than a network. We live in a time where networks are growing. These networks are essential for successful change, and they are the first step in people finding like-minded others. Usually, people network together for personal or instrumental reasons. To create a community of practice means you are available for each other. The people who are connected in a community are there not only for their own needs, but also for the needs of others. People need to clarify their personal intent and commitment. As a group, they need to agree on how they will work together and how to support one another and how their work will look like. And then I want to look at the needs for a healthy community. A community has stages where it moves through like every group. The first stage is romance of idealization. The second stage is power struggle, where leaders and boundaries are tested. The third stage is stability. If it has moved through the power struggle, there will be stability because moving through a power struggle creates reciprocity, where everybody has a place. This leads automatically towards the stage of commitment and co-creation. When you have reached the last stage, doesn't mean it moves back again towards power struggle. With every year, new people coming in, it has to be settled again, over and over again. In my opinion, a healthy community needs movement, a moment where we all move our body, where we all charge up our system to begin the day with, our bodywork class. A community needs space for processes where all the needs and questions that live in the community can be addressed, where we live the principle one is all and all is one, and that's the take a risk night. The community needs nourishment, where we are all are focused on the same thing, the team night. The community needs also space to evolve deeper connection, where we meet on a soul level and our spiritual needs are met, and that's the spiritual service. We do have a transformational method to work with, where we in our work give a lot of space to the lower self, but is there in the community also space to give the shadow a place? Ask yourself if the values around harmony, diversity, and conflict are discussed enough. And how do you treat individuals who don't agree? How does your community deal with bad news about itself? Are there cliques or is there talking behind the backs? Is the community awareness around the power balance? And is there willingness to examine imbalances? Is there willingness to serve the community? Is there a balance between process and production? What's in general the social climate of the community? And is there a willingness to include everything and everybody? So let's have a look, how can we integrate the shadow? And I will name 9 ways to maintain community health. The first, whatever the goal of a meeting is of a group as part of the community, give attention to the personal. Second, accept negative feelings, allow them to be without pressure to change or transform. Third, if someone is disruptive, make sure that person is heard and not get responses with understanding. Sorry, I think I named that a little bit weird. So if somebody is really disruptive, make sure that person is heard and get responses from you with understanding. Listen to the underlying message. Look at your own family system, that's the fourth part, to see if you are carrying any dysfunctional patterns into the community. The fifth, try wearing another hat. If you are mainly focused on production, try to switch to process. Challenge yourself. The sixth, if you are taking too much responsibility, pass it on to others. If you have too less, ask for more. Seventh, don't be ashamed to ask for help, also when you need help from outside for mediation. 8, while holding the vision and the trust, plan for worst case scenarios. 9, set aside regular time to review the community vision and accomplishments, internal dynamics, and to play and celebrate together. My message for today is to make a communication agreement. Take responsibility for your own feelings. Communicate directly with the persons who are involved in an issue. Do not speak critically about others behind their backs. State your position first before asking how others feel about it. Practice active listening. Provide continual feedback. Respect and validate other people's feelings. And use humor respectful.